What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected voices walks into what should be a simple morning interview, only to face disrespect that crosses every line? In just 27 seconds of on-air chaos, Savannah Guthrie would learn that some guests refuse to be talked down to, and the entire Today Show set would witness a meltdown that nobody saw coming. The morning started like any other at Studio 1A in Rockefeller Center. Samuel L. Jackson arrived at the iconic glass-walled studio, greeted the production team with his usual professionalism, and settled into the bright orange couch across from the panel. Savannah Guthrie sat in her usual spot, flanked by Hoda Kotb and Craig Melvin, all three holding their coffee mugs with the show's logo printed on the side. The lights were hot, the cameras were rolling, and America was tuning in for what they thought would be another routine celebrity interview. But nothing about this morning would be routine. "We are so excited to have you here," Savannah began, her smile perfect and practiced. "You've been in the business for how long now? It must be, 40 years? Samuel nodded, his expression pleasant but guarded. "Close to that, yes. It's been quite a journey." "Well, we wanted to talk to you about your latest project," Savannah continued, glancing down at her notes. "But first, I think our viewers would love to know something. You've played so many tough guy roles, so many characters who are just, angry all the time. Is that just typecasting, or is that who you really are?" The studio fell quiet. Hoda's smile flickered. Craig shifted in his seat. Samuel's eyebrows raised slightly, but his voice remained calm. "I think that's a pretty narrow view of my career," he replied evenly. "I've played everything from a Jedi Master to a caring father to historical figures. I don't think angry is the word I'd use." Savannah laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, come on. You have to admit, you have a certain reputation. I mean, your characters are always yelling, always using that voice. That's your thing, right?" "That's not my thing," Samuel said, his tone cooling. "That's called acting. That's called range. And if you'd done your research, you'd know that." The tension was immediate and palpable. Hoda jumped in quickly, trying to smooth things over. "What Samuel is saying is that he's incredibly versatile, and we've all loved watching his career evolve over the decades." "Decades," Savannah repeated, as if she hadn't heard Hoda at all. Speaking of decades, there are a lot of younger actors coming up now. Do you ever feel like maybe it's time to step aside? Let the new generation have their moment?" The question hung in the air like a grenade. Craig's mouth actually fell open. Hoda touched Savannah's arm, but Savannah didn't seem to notice. She kept her eyes fixed on Samuel, waiting for his response. "Step aside?" Samuel repeated slowly. "Why, step aside from what exactly?" "Well, from the spotlight," Savannah said, waving her hand dismissively. "I mean, you've had your time. You've made your money. Don't you think it's a little, greedy to keep taking roles that could go to someone younger? Someone who's trying to build a career?" "Greedy," Samuel said flatly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of disbelief. "I'm just saying," Savannah pressed on, leaning forward with what she probably thought was journalistic intensity. "At some point, doesn't it become about ego? About holding on to fame because you can't let go?" Hoda actually stood up slightly, as if she might physically intervene. "Savannah, I don't think—" "No, let her finish," Samuel interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "I want to hear where this is going." Savannah seemed encouraged by this, mistaking his composure for agreement. "Look, all I'm saying is that maybe there's a conversation to be had about older actors. And I'm not just talking about you, but actors in general who are past their prime. Maybe they should take a step back. Let the industry move forward without them." "Past their prime," Samuel repeated, and now there was something dangerous in his voice. Something that made even Savannah pause. "You think I'm past my prime?" "Well, I mean, you're not exactly young anymore," Savannah said with a little laugh. "That's just a fact. And facts don't care about feelings, right? Craig actually winced. Hoda looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch. The camera operators kept filming, knowing they were capturing something unprecedented. "Let me tell you some facts," Samuel said, his voice growing stronger. "Fact number one, I've been nominated for an Academy Award. I've won multiple awards for my craft. I've starred in some of the highest grossing films in cinema history. Fact number two, I'm currently in 3 projects that are all in production, and I was specifically requested for each one. Not because I'm holding on to anything, but because directors want to work with me. Fact number 3, you just insulted not only me, but every working actor over 50 on national television." "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive," Savannah shot back, her own voice rising now. "This is what's wrong with your generation. You can't handle honest questions. Everything is offensive. Everything is an attack." "My generation," Samuel's voice dropped lower. "The generation that built the very industry you're sitting here talking about. The generation that fought for opportunities so that everyone could have a seat at the table. That generation." "You're twisting my words," Savannah protested. "No, I'm repeating your words," Samuel countered. "You asked if I should step aside because I'm old. You called me greedy for continuing to work. You said I'm past my prime. Those are your words, not mine." Hoda tried again. "I think what we're trying to say is—" "I know exactly what's being said," Samuel interrupted, but his tone with Hoda was gentler. "And I appreciate you trying to salvage this. But I don't think there's any salvaging this conversation." Savannah's face was flushed now, her composure cracking. "You know what? Maybe the problem is that you can't handle criticism. Maybe that's why you're getting so defensive. I'm just doing my job as a journalist, asking tough questions." "Tough questions?" Samuel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think that was journalism? Let me tell you what journalism looks like. Journalism is research. Journalism is asking informed questions. Journalism is treating your guest with basic respect. What you did was attempt to humiliate someone on live television, and you thought you could get away with it because I'd just sit here and take it." "I am not trying to humiliate anyone," Savannah insisted, her voice getting shrill. "You're being incredibly difficult right now." "Difficult," Samuel said, shaking his head. "There it is. I defend myself. I point out your disrespectful line of questioning, and now I'm difficult." Craig finally spoke up, his voice careful. "Samuel, we really do appreciate you being here, and I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot." "The wrong foot?" Samuel turned to Craig, and his expression was almost pitying. "Craig, your co-host just spent the last several minutes suggesting I'm too old to work, that I'm greedy, that I'm past my prime, and that I should disappear so younger people can have opportunities. That's not the wrong foot. That's a planned attack." "It was not an attack," Savannah snapped. "Stop playing the victim. You're a rich, famous actor. You can handle a few hard questions." "Hard questions about my work, sure," Samuel replied. "Questions about my age, my right to continue working, my supposed greed. That's not journalism. That's ageism. And the fact that you can't see the difference is deeply concerning." The studio was silent except for the low hum of equipment. The production team watched from behind the cameras, frozen in place. This was live television, and there was no stopping it now. "You know what I think," Savannah said, and her voice had taken on a cold edge. "I think you came in here with an attitude. I think you wanted to make this difficult. I think you wanted to cause a scene." Samuel stared at her for a long moment. Then he slowly reached up and unclipped the microphone from his shirt. "I came in here to talk about my work," he said quietly. "I came in here as a professional, but I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected on national television. I'm not going to let you use me as some kind of punching bag to make yourself feel important." "Oh, please," Savannah scoffed. "You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" Samuel stood up, still holding his microphone. "Let me ask you something. Would you have asked a white actor in his 60s if he should step aside? Would you have called Meryl Streep greedy for continuing to work? Would you have told Tom Hanks he's past his prime? Savannah's face went pale. That's not... I didn't. You're making this about... I'm making this about what it is, Samuel said firmly. Disrespect. Ageism. And yeah, since you want to go there, probably some racism mixed in too. Because I guarantee you wouldn't have come at certain other actors this way. How dare you, Savannah breathed. How dare you accuse me of racism on my own show? How dare I? Samuel's voice rose for the first time. How dare you sit there and tell me I should stop working? How dare you diminish my career, my craft, my contributions? How dare you think you have the right to decide when I've had enough success? Hoda stood up completely now, her hands raised. Okay, everyone. Let's just take a breath. I'm done taking breaths, Samuel said, cutting her off, but keeping his eyes on Savannah. I'm done being polite. I'm done playing along with this little game where you get to insult me and I'm supposed to smile and nod. Nobody insulted you, Savannah insisted, but her voice wavered. You're being overly sensitive. Sensitive, Samuel repeated, and he actually smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. You know what? I've heard that word used to silence people my entire career. Anytime someone stands up for themselves, anytime someone refuses to accept mistreatment, they're being sensitive. They're being difficult. They're causing problems. Craig stood up too, positioning himself slightly between Samuel and Savannah. Samuel, I think we all need to... You need to get yourself a new co-host, Samuel said bluntly, looking at Craig, because this one doesn't understand the first thing about respect or professionalism. Savannah shot to her feet. Excuse me? You don't get to come onto my show and tell me how to do my job. Your show? Samuel raised his eyebrows. Last I checked, this was NBC's show. You're just the person sitting in the chair. And based on today's performance, maybe they need to rethink that choice. The gasp from Savannah was audible even on camera. Her face turned red, her hands clenched into fists. Get out, she said, her voice shaking. Get off my set right now. Gladly, Samuel said, placing his microphone carefully on the coffee table. But let me be very clear about something. I'm not leaving because you told me to. I'm leaving because I have too much self-respect to stay somewhere I'm not respected. You are so out of line, Savannah hissed, moving closer. You are making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was accepting this interview, Samuel replied calmly. I should have known better. I should have checked who would be conducting it. What is that supposed to mean? Savannah demanded. It means you have a reputation, Samuel said simply. Other guests have talked about you. Other actors have mentioned how you conduct interviews, how you try to create drama, how you put people on the defensive. I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe they were exaggerating, but they weren't. If anything, they undersold it. Hoda tried one more time to intervene. Samuel, please, if we could just... Hoda, you seem like a good person, Samuel said, his tone softening when he addressed her. I have no issue with you. Craig, same goes for you. But her? He gestured toward Savannah without looking at her. She needs to learn that being a journalist doesn't give her the right to be cruel. Cruel? Savannah laughed, but it was a bitter sound. You don't know what cruel is. Try being a woman in this industry. Try dealing with what I deal with every single day. That's not an excuse, Samuel said flatly. Your struggles don't give you permission to make other people struggle. Your pain doesn't justify causing pain to others. That's not how any of this works. Get out, Savannah repeated, her voice breaking now. Get out before I have security remove you. Samuel looked around the studio, at the cameras still rolling, at the crew watching in stunned silence, at Hoda and Craig, who both looked mortified. You won't need security, he said quietly. I'm already leaving. But before I go, let me say this for everyone watching at home. He turned to face the main camera directly. If you're watching this, and you're older, and you're still working, and you're still contributing to your field, don't let anyone tell you that you're past your prime. Don't let anyone tell you that you should step aside. Your experience matters. Your knowledge matters. Your presence matters. And don't ever let anyone diminish your worth because of a number. Then, he turned back to the panel one last time. Thank you for having me. Well, most of you anyway. And with that, Samuel L. Jackson walked off the Today Show set, leaving behind a host in tears, a panel in chaos, and millions of viewers who couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. Savannah collapsed back onto the couch, her hands covering her face. Hoda immediately moved to comfort her, but Craig stayed where he was, his expression unreadable. The cameras kept rolling because no one had called cut. The control room was in chaos, producers screaming into headsets, directors trying to figure out what to do next. We need to go to commercial, Craig finally said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. We need to go to commercial right now. But Savannah wasn't done. She looked up, her eyes red, her makeup smeared. He attacked me, she said to the camera, her voice desperate. You all saw it. He attacked me for no reason. Savannah, stop talking, Hoda said urgently, pulling at her arm. Please, just stop talking. No, Savannah jerked away. No, I won't stop. He came in here with an agenda. He wanted to make me look bad. He wanted to create this scene. You created this scene, Craig said quietly, and the words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. You asked him if he should step aside. You called him greedy. You told him he was past his prime. This wasn't on him, Savannah. This was on you. Savannah stared at Craig like he'd slapped her. Are you seriously taking his side right now? I'm not taking anyone's side, Craig replied. I'm stating facts. We all heard what you said. America heard what you said. And what you said was disrespectful and inappropriate. I was doing my job, Savannah protested, but her voice was losing its strength. Your job is to interview guests, not insult them, Craig said. Your job is to ask questions, not make accusations. Your job is to represent this show with dignity and professionalism. Craig, Hoda warned, glancing nervously at the cameras. I don't care, Craig said, and there was a hardness in his voice that neither woman had heard before. Someone needs to say it. This was wrong. What happened here this morning was completely wrong. Savannah stood up abruptly, yanking off her own microphone. Fine, she spat. If that's how you feel, if that's how everyone feels, then maybe I should leave too. Maybe you should, Craig said evenly. Take a walk. Cool off. Think about what just happened. I know what just happened, Savannah said, her voice rising to a near shout. I got ambushed by a difficult guest and then thrown under the bus by my own co-hosts. You're not hearing yourself, Hoda said softly, tears in her own eyes now. Savannah, please, you're not hearing what you're saying. I hear myself perfectly, Savannah snapped. She grabbed her coffee mug and threw it, not at anyone, but at the ground, where it shattered into pieces. The crash made everyone jump. I am so sick of walking on eggshells. I am so sick of having to be perfect every single second. I ask tough questions. That's what I do. That's what I'm known for. There's a difference between tough questions and hostile questions, Craig said, his voice still calm but firm. What you did today was hostile, and it backfired. So now it's my fault that he couldn't handle a real interview? Savannah was pacing now, her heels clicking on the studio floor. It's my fault that he got offended? Yes, Craig said simply. It is your fault. 100%. The word hung there, impossible to take back. Savannah stopped pacing and stared at Craig with an expression of pure betrayal. You know what? Forget this. Forget all of this. She stormed toward the exit, the same one Samuel had used minutes before. But before she reached it, she turned back one more time. "This show is nothing without me," she said, pointing at both Craig and Hoda. "Nothing. You'll see. When the ratings tank, when the sponsors pull out, when everything falls apart, you'll realize what you lost today." "I think we all realize what happened today," Craig replied quietly. "And it wasn't what you think." Savannah let out a sound that was half sob, half scream, and then she was gone, disappearing through the doorway and leaving behind a studio in absolute turmoil. Hoda sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. Craig stood frozen in place, still staring at the empty doorway. The crew remained silent, unsure if they should keep filming or cut away. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to salvage what was left of the broadcast. "What do we do?" Hoda finally whispered, looking up at Craig with wide, frightened eyes. Craig took a deep breath and walked back to his spot on the couch. He sat down, straightened his tie, and looked directly into the camera. "We take a commercial break," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "And then we come back and we address what just happened. Honestly. Transparently. Because our viewers deserve that." Hoda nodded, wiping her eyes and trying to compose herself. "Okay," she said. "Okay, we can do that." "We have to do that," Craig replied. "This isn't going away. This isn't something we can pretend didn't happen." As the show finally cut to commercial, the studio remained in chaos. Producers rushed onto the set, talking rapidly to Craig and Hoda. Camera operators compared footage, making sure they'd captured everything. Audio technicians checked their recordings. Everyone knew they'd just witnessed something that would dominate headlines for days, maybe weeks. Back in his dressing room, Samuel L. Jackson was gathering his belongings, his face calm, but his hands shaking slightly with adrenaline. A production assistant knocked timidly on his door. "Mr. Jackson, I just wanted to say, for what it's worth, I thought you handled that with incredible grace." Samuel looked at the young man and managed a small smile. "Thank you, but I shouldn't have had to handle anything. That's the problem." "I know," the assistant said. "We all know. Everyone on the crew knows. What she did was wrong." Samuel nodded slowly. "Make sure that's on the record then. Because when this blows up, and it will blow up, people are going to try to spin this as me being difficult, or aggressive, or having a temper. Make sure people know the truth." "We will," the assistant promised. "I promise you, we will." Meanwhile, in another part of the building, Savannah sat in her own dressing room, her phone already blowing up with calls and texts. Her publicist was demanding to know what happened. The network executives were asking for an immediate meeting. Her agent was telling her not to say anything to anyone until they could figure out a strategy. But Savannah wasn't listening to any of them. She was replaying the interview in her head, trying to understand where it had all gone wrong. She'd ask questions. That's what she did. She asked difficult questions that other journalists wouldn't ask. Why was that suddenly a problem? She picked up her phone and started typing out a tweet, then deleted it. Tried again. Deleted it again. Everything she wanted to say sounded defensive, or angry, or desperate. She threw her phone across the room, where it hit the wall and clattered to the floor. There was another knock on her door. "Go away," she called out. "Savannah, it's Tom." The voice of the executive producer. "We need to talk." "I said go away." "I'm coming in," Tom said, and the door opened. He stepped inside, his face grave. "We have a situation." "You think I don't know that?" Savannah snapped. "I was there, remember?" "The network wants you to issue an apology," Tom said carefully. "Immediately, before this gets any bigger." Savannah's laugh was hollow. "An apology? For what? For doing my job?" "For the way you spoke to our guest," Tom replied. "Savannah, I've known you for years. I've supported you through everything. But today crossed a line. What line? Savannah demanded. Be specific. You questioned whether he should still be working because of his age. You called him greedy. You suggested he was past his prime. All of that was inappropriate and, frankly, potentially discriminatory. Potentially discriminatory, Savannah repeated numbly. We're going to get sued, Tom said bluntly. Or he's going to go public with this in a way that makes us look terrible. Or both. So you need to apologize. You need to make this right. And you need to do it now. Savannah felt tears starting again, but she blinked them back furiously. And if I don't? Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then we'll have to consider other options. Other options, Savannah said flatly. You mean you'll fire me? I mean we'll have to consider what's best for the show and the network, Tom said carefully. This isn't personal, Savannah. This is business. Everything is personal, Savannah shot back. Don't pretend it's not. Tom sighed and rubbed his face. Just write the apology. Please. We can fix this, but you have to meet us halfway. After he left, Savannah sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup was ruined. Her eyes were swollen. Her carefully crafted image was crumbling. And somewhere out there, Samuel L. Jackson was probably telling his side of the story to anyone who would listen. She picked up her phone from where it had fallen and opened Twitter. The trending topics were already dominated by variations of their names. Hashtags were forming. Video clips were being shared. And the narrative was already being written. And it wasn't the narrative she wanted. Back on the set, Craig and Hoda were preparing to return from commercial break. They decided together how they would address what happened, what they would say to viewers, how they would move forward. It wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. The floor director counted. Down. 5, 4, 3, 2, and they were back live. Craig looked into the camera with an expression of somber honesty. Welcome back. I think we all know that what you just witnessed was difficult to watch. It was difficult to be a part of. And we owe you, our viewers, an explanation and an apology. Hoda nodded beside him. What happened this morning was not representative of the values of this show or this network. Our job is to conduct thoughtful, respectful interviews with our guests. Today, we fell short of that standard. We fell short, Craig echoed, and for that, we are truly sorry. They went on to discuss what had transpired, carefully but honestly, acknowledging the inappropriate nature of some of the questions, expressing regret for how the situation escalated, and promising to do better. They didn't throw Savannah under the bus, but they didn't defend her either. They simply told the truth. And as they spoke, millions of viewers watched, forming their own opinions about what they'd witnessed, about who was right and who was wrong, about what it meant for the future of the show. The morning that had started so normally had become anything but. One interview, one series of inappropriate questions, one moment of disrespect had spiraled into something much bigger. Something that would be analyzed and discussed and debated for a long time to come. Because in the end, what happened on the Today Show that morning wasn't just about one host and one guest. It was about respect, about dignity, about the way we treat each other, especially when cameras are rolling and the world is watching. Samuel L. Jackson had walked off that set with his head held high, refusing to accept disrespect, refusing to be diminished. And in doing so, he'd reminded everyone watching that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in your own mistreatment. The cameras eventually stopped rolling. The crew began breaking down the set for the next segment. Life at Studio 1A continued, as it always did. But nothing would ever be quite the same after that morning. The moment had been captured, recorded, and preserved forever, and its impact would ripple far beyond those studio walls, touching everyone who witnessed it, everyone who heard about it, everyone who understood exactly what had transpired in those chaotic, unforgettable minutes. The lesson was clear. Respect isn't optional. Dignity isn't negotiable. And some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed.